New film out this week called Only You, which is the debut feature from Harry Woodliff. She had made some short films. She was BAFTA nominated in 2004 for a film called Knits, I think. And so this is her feature debut as a writer and director. Laia Costa, who is so brilliant in Victoria, is a Spanish woman living in Glasgow. And all her friends are starting to settle down. We first meet her at a New Year's Eve party in which someone's trying to fix her up with their brother. He seems, they say he's the right age, he's ready to settle down, all this kind of stuff. But she's really not interested. So she says, no, I'm going to go home. And she stumbles out into the night. And she's trying to get a taxi, and she's trying to get a taxi on, New Year's Eve. Very difficult. She finally hails a taxi, and the taxi stops. But then she realises the taxi hasn't stopped for her. It stopped for this fresh-faced young man, played by Josh Connor, called Jake, who turns out to be a PhD student and a DJ on the side. And she says, it was my taxi. And he says, no, it was my taxi. So anyway, they agreed to share the taxi. So they share the taxi ride for a certain moment, and then one thing leads to another, and she invites him back to her flat. And when he gets to her flat, because he's a DJ, the first thing he does is he goes to the record collection, and he starts commenting on the record collection, and he pulls out an LP of Blood and Chocolate, the Elvis Costello LP, and he says, wow, this is a great record collection. She says, oh, it's largely my dad's. And so he puts an Elvis Costello track from Blood and Chocolate on, and they start dancing around the room, and one thing leads to another, and a romance begins. And suddenly everything seems to be sort of progressing faster than either of them had thought. And the next thing is he's moving into her flat, but she has a secret that she hasn't yet told him.
I have a confession.
What is it?
Nothing.
Just because you said confession. So now I have to hear it. Yeah, you have to tell me. You're gonna have to tell me now. Don't you dare use the photos. They are memories, not weapons. Give it here. Give it back. Tell me, confess. You have to confess. You have to confess. I would jiggle all day. Tell me. You have to tell me.
What if I am a little bit older than I said I was?
What do you mean?
Like I'm not 29?
So he has already told her that he's 26, and she's sort of implied that she was 28, but now she's saying maybe if I'm 29. Of course, the answer is she's in her mid-30s. That's why all her friends are at the point of settling down. And he's... firstly, she says, is it a problem? And he says, well, it's not a problem. It's just that, you've aged 6 years in the last 5 minutes. How old are you actually? And when he knows, he's perfectly fine. But she is convinced that the age difference between them of 9 years is going to mean that they are out of sync further on down the line. And then he suddenly says, no, look, you are who I want to be with. Let's start a family and let's do it right now. So it does a very interesting thing about inverting the gender stereotypes. That suddenly he's the person who said, no, this is what I want to do. And I want to have a family with you, and I want to do it now. And so this kind of whirlwind romance leads to something which looks like it's going to be more permanent. And then what happens is that the film slowly progresses from the kind of excitement and the possibilities of let's just see what happens into the more challenging prospect of actually trying for a baby. And what the film is then about is about the way that their relationship attempts to negotiate this third element of, what it would mean, around her, all her other friends are starting up families without any difficulty at all. Something that at first seems to be a wish, a desire, then seems to become a need or perhaps even an obligation. And the romance of the initial situation starts to get replaced with more kind of methodical, even medical intervention. And meanwhile, they are still kind of discovering each other and discovering their relationship. I thought this film was just stone cold knockout brilliant. And I'll tell you why. Firstly, I believed in both the characters Absolutely. I just thought, fine. I know who you are, and I absolutely believe in the characters that you're playing. And they're both incidentally brilliant actors. I mean, they've both done great work before, whether it's God's Own Country or or Victoria. Secondly, the film has a really brilliant balance between, on the one hand, the sort of dreamy intimacy of new love. It's very good at evoking that kind of skin-prickling feeling of romance, but balancing that against the kind of the more down-to-earth realities of everyday life, of negotiating how it is that you're actually going to work out a relationship, what your dreams, your aspirations are, how they may be different, how they may be similar. And it balances those two elements in a way that just struck me as profoundly realistic. That way that when you're right in the middle of a really intense relationship, that there is still the pressures of real life going on. And she keeps saying to him, "You've got this idealized young view of love," and he keeps saying, "But you are all I want." And the other thing is, if you have any experience of the situation that they find themselves in, the film is very honest and very frank, and has a really kind of admirably clear-eyed depiction of how that scenario, can play out, and what's actually involved in it. And I thought it was very good on the day-to-day details of those sort of things. And then beyond that, it has a brilliant use of music. There is a nice incidental score, which is piano and cello, but it uses pop music in a really sharp way. And most notably, when they come back to the flat at the beginning, when he pulls out Blood and Chocolate, the track that he plays is "I Want You," which is the last track on side one of Blood and Chocolate, which I think was a single. And I know it was a single because it's a single that means a lot to me. And it is such a brilliant choice, because "I Want You" is, on the one hand, it's a love song. On the other hand, it's this kind of anguished Elvis Costello growl. I mean, it starts with this really kind of lovely lyrical, "Oh, my baby, baby," and really sort of quiet. But then it's then got these kind of huge, great big well springs of pain and recrimination and everything. And yet it is also, when it gets going, a kind of funky, sensual, exciting song. And it's brilliantly chosen. I mean, it's like the thing when Barry Jenkins uses "Hello Stranger" in that brilliant scene in Moonlight when he comes into the diner, and that's what's playing on the thing. It's a song that's playing in the scene that is basically telling you so much about what's going on in the scene. So I thought, wow, this is, and the best thing about it is the movie kind of creeps up on you. It's got this very intimate and yet frankly unobtrusive handheld cinematography that really makes you feel that you're, on the one hand, you're in that kind of bubble, that intimate bubble that the couple are in. But on the other hand, it doesn't feel like it's intrusive or like it's voyeuristic or any of that. It just feels like it's kind of giving you a sense of how they feel about each other. And I thought, I loved the way that it played with an inverted and an upturned stereotypes. I loved how honest it felt, and I just every now and then you see a little film that's it can't be made, must have been made for tuppence a bag.
I can't believe you've done that.
Well, but it really got under my skin, and I just thought, wow, this is something very special, because it's honest and it's down to earth and it's gritty when it needs to be, but it's a love story. It's a proper love story about the complications and the confusions and the misunderstandings and the ecstatic excitement and the loneliness of being in love. That weird, because the title is "Only You." The title tells you something about what's going on underneath that story.